Hello everyone and welcome to another exciting Jurassic World Dominion video by Jeremy James Prutchick. Recently, I talked about the first part of the newly released prologue for Jurassic World Dominion. If you haven't seen it yet and want to hear my thoughts on it, check it out. I say the first part because the prologue is split into two parts. The first part takes place in the past, while the second part takes place in the present. So presently, I am going to talk about the present. Since this part of the prologue is much shorter than the first, I'm going to be more thorough than before, and sort of do both play-by-play and color commentary as well. So let's get started. We start off with a helicopter flying through the night, followed by the words 65 million years later. Again, taking place in the present day, unlike the first part of the prologue. Then we see a dinosaur trampling through the woods, but not just any dinosaur. It's the T-Rex. But she's being pursued by the helicopter that belongs to the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. We then get these cool shots of Rexy's eyes as she tries to get away. Next we see a quiet little drive-in movie theater, and everyone's having a good time. There's a cute little cartoon on the screen telling people to buy snacks, and then there's this kid walking about. But as the kid's walking, all of a sudden, people are running and making a lot of noise. The kid turns around to see what's happening, and when he does, he's absolutely terrified as a large shadow towers over him. And there's something interesting I found out about this particular kid. This is the same kid who was seen riding a baby Triceratops in Jurassic World, just more grown up now. But this time, he's standing face to face with the T-Rex. As the T-Rex enters the drive-in movie theater, some people still have no idea it's even there. These three are just sitting back and relaxing, and this couple here is making out during all of this. I mean, think about this for a minute. You're in the car, making out with your date, and there's a T-Rex right outside your window. That's pretty romantic, isn't it? More and more people are starting to realize there's a dinosaur nearby as they run away from Rexy. One guy even gets hit by a car. The people in the projection booth get out of there, and Rexy accidentally flips over a car with her foot while trying to get away from everyone. These next couple of shots are my favorite ones in this part of the prologue. Rexy standing in front of the movie screen. She lets out a big roar, but then another bright light hits her face. The helicopter from earlier just found her again. They try to shoot her, but they have terrible aim as they end up shooting through a car window. Rexy's had enough of all this and turns away to flee again. I will say that I'm glad that the shooter was using what I assume were tranquilizer darts instead of lethal bullets. I mean, if they're part of the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, conservation's kind of their job. Everyone's still panicking and people start to drive away. Rexy continues to flee the area, and as she leaves her mark in the form of a big footprint in the mud. Rexy must have found some thick forest to hide in, because in the next shot, the people in the helicopter have lost sight of the dinosaur as they scan their spotlight all over the place, but they don't find anything. The shooter's frustrated by this, but the pilot's not worried at all, because he assures the shooter that, quote, she can't run forever, end quote. Then the helicopter withdraws from the chase. Then we see the T-Rex skeleton logo with a stony texture, and it says, to be continued, in theaters this summer. And that's the end of the prologue for Jurassic World Dominion. So now I'm going to give you my in-depth thoughts on it. As far as this part of the prologue goes, there are two big things that really stood out for me. The first thing is the visuals, just like in the first part of the prologue, only this time it's for different reasons than before. More specifically, the lighting, or the lack thereof rather. Because most of the scenes with Rexy were dark and didn't have a lot of light in it, you couldn't really see a whole lot of her, and even when you could, it wasn't for very long. But given the particular setting of this scene, it's highly effective. Why is that? Well, think about it like this. When you go to a drive-in movie theater, there's not a lot of light because they run at nighttime. The only light usually comes from the movie screen, the snack stand/projection area, and maybe a couple of cars. Everywhere else is dark so that you can see the screen better, and that's why a lot of drive-in movie theaters are set up in more rural areas, because it's darker out there. And if there was an animal running around, like a fox or a coyote, you'd be lucky to even get a glimpse of it because it's dark everywhere. So with that in mind, let's look at this scene again. Notice how there's not a lot of light here. Most of it's just coming from around the movie screen. So the people there can't really see much else beyond that. And this is especially evident when the kid looks up and sees Rexy towering over him. The only light in this shot is coming from the helicopter, and even then you can hardly see Rexy because she's blocking it. What we're seeing here is basically that kid's first-person point of view, like you're actually there. And in these subsequent shots, Rexy steps in front of the movie projector and blocks that light too. And you can see her shadow project onto the movie screen. Finally, in this shot where Rexy steps in front of the screen, the main source of light is coming from the screen and from a car's headlights. And it's here that you can see the most of Rexy in an otherwise dark setting. This is why the lack of lighting is so effective in these scenes. It's not a lot, but it's just enough to show you what it could be like to see such a rare sighting of this magnificent creature in our world. Moving on, the second big thing that stood out for me was the story. Because believe it or not, this scene actually told us quite a lot, but unfortunately, it's a little unsettling as far as the plot goes. It tells us that even though the dinosaurs escaped to freedom in Fallen Kingdom, some of them are struggling to survive. In this case, Rexy. When Rexy was living on Isla Nublar for 20 plus years, she knew the land. She knew where to find food, water, and shelter. But here on the mainland, she's seeing this whole new world for the first time. To a certain degree, Rexy had to start all over again. She had to find a new water source, a new source of food, and she had to find a new source of shelter. And when she was exploring the land trying to find these things, she may have encountered people completely by accident. For example, she could have came out of the forest only to stumble onto a busy highway. Or maybe she smelled something good to eat, only to stumble across a campground, like the Allosaurus did in Battle at Big Rock. Or she could have come across a drive-in movie theater. And what we saw in the prologue could have potentially been one of these encounters. Rexy just wants to live in peace. Did you notice that throughout this entire scene, Rexy didn't attack anybody? When she came across the drive-in theater, she passed right through it while trying to avoid everything. And when she makes those quick snaps with her jaws in these shots, she was doing it in defense, trying to, for lack of a better word, shoo the people away from her. And that's because she's scared. It was bad enough that she was being chased by a helicopter, but now she's in a loud, crowded place with people screaming everywhere. But, as I mentioned earlier, there's a silver lining here, because the helicopter did lose sight of her. So Rexy must have found a really dense part of the forest to hide in, at least for now. Hopefully Rexy will find a safe place for good, and soon. A place away from all the loud noises, the bright lights, the pollution, and of course people, especially those who would want to hurt her, or worse. Because unfortunately, dinosaurs are not universally loved in the Jurassic universe. There are some people that think that dinosaurs are nothing but cold-blooded monsters. But on the bright side, there are people like Owen Grady and Claire Deering who know that these are not monsters. They are animals, and they're just trying to do what animals do, survive. Especially with the addition of dinosaur conservation groups in the movies, like the Dinosaur Observation Committee, or even the Dinosaur Protection Group, hopefully they can help study, monitor, and preserve the dinosaurs, from a safe distance of course. We'll find out soon enough, because next summer's going to be here before we know it. Hang in there, guys. With that said, this concludes another Jurassic World Dominion video by Jeremy James Prutchick. What did you think of the second part of the prologue? Did I miss anything worth mentioning? Talk about it in the comments and have some fun. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more Jurassic content, you can find lots more of it on my channel. And if you want to keep seeing more Jurassic content, subscribe. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.